For more insights, we are joined by Professor Zhiqun Zhu. He's a political science and international relations at Bucknell University. Professor, we saw the handshake. We heard the exchange of opening remarks. What did you make of the overall tone of the summit? Are there signs that we might see improvement in ties?
Yes, I think the opening remarks by the two presidents sound promising. And of course, the overall relationship is still very difficult and tense due to the structural problems and lack of mutual trust. However, yes, we do see some improvements in the past few months, in the relationship. As you know, the relationship actually has been in complete free fall since early 2018. When former President Donald Trump launched the trade war. Former U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in August last year and the alleged Chinese spy balloon incident in early 2023 further strained the relationship. Both sides became really concerned about the possibility of conflict. So they started to reach out towards each other in May and June this year. And since then, the Biden administration has sent 4 cabinet members, including Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen, to China. And of course, China reciprocated by sending Foreign Minister Wang Yi, climate change envoy Xie Zhenhua, and Vice Premier He Lifeng to the United States to resume high-level dialogue. And this current BidenXi summit is really the culmination of the efforts by both sides to stabilize the relationship. So yes, I do see some improvements, and I remain cautiously optimistic that the relationship will slightly improve after the summit.
Yeah, a promising start, perhaps. President Biden and his team, though, have been playing down expectations, setting the bar at normalizing ties. Where will China's expectations be set? And beyond that, what do they want out of these talks?
Well, indeed, the bar is very low, on both sides, actually. I think for the China side, because the two countries tend to define the relationship very differently, the United States side emphasizes the competitive dimension of the relationship. As a matter of fact, the objective of the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy is to outcompete China, quote unquote. China tends to define the relationship in terms of cooperation and peaceful coexistence. I think that's also China's main expectation from the talks. So I guess that China would like to see more stability in the relationship after the meeting and more concrete actions from the United States to improve the relationship.
Professor Zhu, both leaders of the U.S. and China are facing internal as well as external challenges, namely the economic woes, also global tensions. How could they potentially influence Biden and Xi's dialogue and negotiations between the two nations?
Yes, I think both leaders face some domestic problems. On the U.S. side, Biden is trying to get reelected next year. But the problem is he's trailing Trump in many polls. And also he's facing a divided government and a very strongly anti-China Congress, which may make his China policy very difficult to implement. And of course, China is facing this slowing down economy, and unemployment rate of young people is very high, and foreign investment is shrinking. So I think China needs some help, perhaps, from the United States to jumpstart its economy. So they both face external, internal challenges. Externally, of course, we have these two wars going on, in Ukraine and Gaza, and the two countries have totally different views on these two wars, which may also pose another set of challenges to the bilateral relationship.
Yeah, the differences aside, though, there are areas of potential cooperation. Biden says they face critical global challenges from climate change to counter-narcotics to artificial intelligence that demand their joint efforts. Can those things be progressed and be separated out from the more contentious issues?
Well, if they take a pragmatic approach, yes, you can perhaps focus on areas where you share common interests. I think they can, cooperate in certain areas, including climate change, nuclear non-proliferation, trade, global health, drug trafficking, and promotion of people-to-people exchange in general. For example, recently the number of direct flights between the two sides has increased. I think there should be more flights, and both sides should make it easier for their citizens to visit each other. And of course, they should continue to conduct the cultural, educational, and scientific exchanges. So there are many areas that both sides can work together despite the differences.
And Professor, Taiwan expected to emerge as a central point of contention. How might the timing of the summit just 2 months before Taiwan's presidential election influence the discussions on this very sensitive issue?
Well, details are not available yet. I think I'm pretty sure they will cover Taiwan issue, but most likely they're going to reiterate their long-standing existing policies. For the United States, of course, Biden will emphasize that the United States follows one China policy and does not support Taiwanese independence. And of course, the Chinese side will emphasize that there's only one China and Taiwan's part of China. So those will be repeated if they do cover the Taiwan issue. But of course, as you mentioned, there will be an election in less than 2 months. So I think that both sides will also be very careful not to, appear to be interfering in Taiwan's elections. I think they will have to wait until election outcome is out and see who will be the winner, and then perhaps they will decide whether they will adjust policy towards Taiwan. But I don't think they're going to do anything right now between now and the election in January.
Yeah, that election will be closely watched. Just quickly, how should we in Southeast Asia view these talks, given the ongoing tussle for influence between the two superpowers in the Indo-Pacific?
I think the Southeast Asian countries should feel encouraged by the very fact that the two leaders are talking to each other, because for a long time, many countries in Southeast Asia, including Singapore, often found themselves between a rock and hard place. They feel pressures from both Washington and Beijing to take sides in the great power rivalry. And nobody wants to make that kind of a painful choice. So now looks like, both sides are emphasizing that, we're not looking for confrontation. We're not seeking a new Cold War. So that's a great relief, for Southeast Asian countries. It means that it's good news, and also means that the Southeast Asian countries, including Singapore, can conduct their own foreign policy, and they can and should maintain productive relations with both powers. So I think Southeast Asian countries should look at this conference very positively, and I hope that they will not do anything that makes it very difficult for Southeast Asian countries to conduct their businesses with these two powers.
Professor, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for your time and your insight this morning. We've been speaking with Professor Zhiqun Zhu, Professor of Political Science and International Relations at Bucknell University.